So, if a company has had Microsoft AX since probably 2009 or 10, for example, and they're still going with it, but they know now that the time has come and they need to get onto the upgrade, but they've got obviously 14 years of data, which they just don't need anymore. Can you separate that out at DDPTech, or is it like the Microsoft tool and it's an all or nothing move?
Yeah, so I think first of all, you've got to address the issue that a customer may not even realise that they've got data that they don't need, and they'll struggle with that concept, Phil. And the fact is, you can't just dismiss data anyway. But where you've got to really look at this is, it's an operational system that you're trying to bring online. Now, an operational system might not necessarily, and it won't need the likes of closed transactions from 10 years ago. That kind of information, if it is required, is more from a reporting perspective, is more from an analysis perspective that you may go back one day and need to look at. So you do not need that in an operational system. This is where people can't make the distinction between what an operational system needs versus it's an archive piece of data. So it should live in a warehouse, it should live in an archive, it should live in a reporting solution somewhere, which is quite different to your live operational system. And people can't always make that distinction. We can help to bring that about. So the way that we do go about that is we will bring together industry best practice across these various different data objects, and we will be suggesting that you need this information versus this other information could be archived, because it's not really going to bring you any operational benefit. You don't need it for a customer to come through your door to be able to sell goods to a customer. You know, you're not using it on a day-to-day basis. You may use some trending or something like that, but that's, you know, that's where a BI solution would come in, which is quite different from an operational system. Once you've gotten past that hurdle, and once we've ascertained what actually should be put into your operational 365, your D365 system, then once we've ascertained what those rules are, of course, that's where our filtering can come into play. And we will filter those data sets down to only include the information that's actually required in the operational system. But that's quite unique, is that, because you won't get that from the vendors' tool sets. And maybe Raki can talk a little bit more about the vendors' tool sets, but we know that that don't exist.
Just before you move on there, if you say that it possibly is needed in the future, why wouldn't we just migrate it all in?
Okay, so it really boils down to a cost perspective. So there's cost and performance issues associated with that. So, you know, if you're going to be moving in terabytes and terabytes of information into a cloud server, you're going to slow down your operational system. So that's number one. You wouldn't want to put it in there from a performance perspective. Number two, it's going to cost you a lot of money in a cloud server, because you're talking about highly available cloud server architecture. So it's not in some kind of a warehouse, which is a slower accessibility type situation. It's a lot more expensive. This is readily available information, very expensive to maintain it in that way. It's just not a good practice. And then on top of all that, you've got to look at the migration cost. So the migration cost to migrate 10 times what you actually need, you're going to be dealing with a lot more cleansing. You're going to be dealing with a lot more mapping of that data, and you're going to be validating a lot more data as well. So from a project perspective, it's going to increase significantly compared to what it would be if you could actually drill it down to what you actually require. And then leave the other information, leave that to be archived where it really belongs.
Yeah, and in comparison to industry best practice to bringing everything from a migration point of view, you're looking at a cost blowout purely for the migration or the implementation effort, at least threefold or more. basically.
3 or 4 times more expensive.
Three times more than the best practice.